Hello all, welcome back to the next one. In this one, we will actually start our discussion on TestNG listeners. So listeners are classes which waits for a particular event to occur. And when that event happens, a respective listener is going to trigger any logic that we want. Let's imagine a real life simple scenario. I want my microwave to make a sound when it completes heating of anything. There should be some program for it, right? There should be some program that is continuously listening to microwave's events. And when microwave timer is off and it is completed heating water or any other food item, it should make a sound so that I know it's done. This is a very simple example of a listener in real life. Similarly, TestNG also provides us different kinds of listeners. And the first one we're going to take a look at is IInvokedMethodListener. So let's start with this. I have created couple of things already and we're going to work on the main thing right now. So this is TestNG underscore listeners test1 class. I have a before class inside it. It just says it prints code in before class, and then we have an after class, and then we have a test method 1 which is gonna be successful, true, and then we have a test method 2 and it's gonna be failed because we are asserting false, we are to the assert true method, right? And this class is under test classes package, so basically this one, and we can take a look at it here, right? And then I created one XML file and named it testng-listeners.xml, and its name is listeners test suite application test, and the class name it refers is test classes dot testng listeners test1. Now let's go ahead, and also I created a package and named it as listeners package. Now let's go ahead and create our first custom listener. So basically what we want to do here is we want to create a class that listens to all our test cases, and when something happens, maybe when my test case starts or my test case stops, or maybe if the test case is successful or if it fails or if it's skipped, basically there are so many events that can occur, right, in our TestNG scenarios. So basically we want to create a listener custom listener class which listens to all these events continuously, and its internal TestNG takes care of it for us, and then we can provide what we want to do when something happens. So right click this one, create a new class and call it custom listener 1, because we're going to create multiple listeners in different lectures. So custom listener 1 and finish. So now we have an empty class up there, right? Let's see what we can do here. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to, because all these listeners, they are interfaces, so we need to implement the methods inside those interfaces in Java. So we're gonna say implement, and I invoked. So I typed IINV and then I pressed control space and it gives me all these options. So I'm gonna pick the one that I have selected right now, IInvokedMethodListener, and this is from org.testng, and hit enter. Once I do that, the error shows up on the class name and it says that we must implement the inherited abstracted method from this class, from this interface. So I'm gonna click on add unimplemented methods, and it's all happy. Everything is fine, and it imported few packages. Make sure you import the correct ones. If something happens, make sure you can fix them manually also. Like if it imports a wrong one, you can actually go ahead and type it manually. So let's minimize this. And what we have here is, in this interface we have two methods, before invocation and after invocation, and it takes in two arguments. I invoked method is the name and this is the type, and I test result, which we have already learned, and test result is the variable name. Now this is the place where we can add our logic. We can add any code which will take place when this action happens. And let's understand what this is. So before invocation and after invocation is nothing. Whenever any method is run inside our TestNG test class, before running that method, this method will be run. So basically this method will be run before any method runs in the test class. So let's say my TestNG underscore listeners test1 class uses the custom listener one. So anything happens. So if before this method, the setup method, the before invocation method will be run. And then before the cleanup method also, this will be run. And before test methods also, this will be run. So before invocation means it will run before any method in the test class. So let's write it in the comment so we know what's happening. Before every method in the test class. And the same thing applies to after invocation. So the only difference is it's gonna be executed after every method in the test class. So now let's see what we can do. We can implement any logic here, but right now we're gonna actually fetch the name of the class where the test method is executed and the name of the method, the actual test method that is executed. So I'm gonna print here before invocation. So we know that it's coming from this method, the before invocation method. And we can actually print like arg, or maybe we can actually use this thing. Method is the name. So see, you can actually see a few differences. Sometimes you might see here arg0 and arg1. So don't worry about the variable names because this is just a variable name. You can actually change it anything, right? You can change it anything. The important part is the type, and whatever name you see here, you can use it. So I'm gonna use this method and dot, or maybe you know what, let's first print the class name. So I'm gonna use the test result variable. So test result dot get class, or maybe get test class. So get test class is going to give us the class name where the method exists, and then dot get name. So this thing will give us the name of the test class where the code was written, and then plus, and then let's hit enter so we have some space and just a little bit decent formatting so it's easy for us to understand. Plus, now we're gonna use the method variable. This is from IInvokedMethod dot get test method dot get method name. So what we have done here is we have seen that we are using the test result variable also to get the class name, and we are making use of the method variable which is from IInvokedMethod to get the name of the method. We can actually use the test result from iTestResult also to get the name of the method, but I wanted to show you both the things, right? So we are just doing this thing here. Now let's just copy this here to our after invocation method and just change the after invocation thing. And that's about it. Now I actually wanted to run this TestNG listeners XML file and show you something. So run as TestNG suite. So what it ran code in before class, then code in test method 1, code in test method 2, and code in after class. Whatever we have here in the TestNG classes, right? That's all we have. Now, how do we know? How do basically this class knows about the custom listener? We implemented something here, but we haven't told this listeners test1 class that there is some custom listener and you can make use of it. We haven't done anything like that. So basically there is a @listeners annotation in TestNG. And there are a couple of ways. We'll take a look at both of them in by step. So listeners, this one I'm going to select the first one, org.testng.annotations. And inside the parenthesis, I need to provide the name of the listener. So custom listener. I need to type something before I can hit control space so it knows. And it tells us that, oops, the wrong one. Custom listeners 1. This one we want, custom listener 1, and it's from the listener package. So, and we saw that we implemented this in listeners package. So we want to make sure that we're getting the right thing. And dot class. And then we can see that, oops, wrong package was also imported. That it imported the correct package also, listeners package dot custom listener 1, and it's really needed because our test class is inside the test classes package and the custom listener 1 is inside the listeners package. So we want to make sure that we import the correct stuff here. So that's about it. That's done. Now I can just right click my XML file and click run as TestNG suite. Now we see the magic. What's happening here? Before invocation method was run, it is running for test classes dot testng underscore listener test1 class, and then it's printing the method name setup, right? Then code in before class run. So before class is the setup. We can see that, right? Code in before class is the setup method. And then after invocation was run, right? And then again before invocation was run, and then test method 1 was executed. Then code executed from test method 1. Then after invocation executed for test method 1. Then again before invocation for test method 2. Then code inside test method 2 executed. Then after invocation for test method 2. And then the same steps happened before invocation for cleanup, code in after class, and then after invocation for cleanup. So basically we can see that we implemented a custom listener here. We can write any logic here and that will be executed when these methods were running. And this before invocation and after invocation executed before and after every single method. It doesn't have to be the test method. This is a very important point to understand, that it does not have to be the test method. It is running before the setup method also, where we had the before class. It is running after and before and after the cleanup method also, where we have the annotation as after class. And it is running before and after the annotations for @test also. And if we had the annotations for @before method or @after method, it will run for them as well. So basically the important part to understand here is IInvokedMethodListener interface. Both the methods inside this interface, they are run for every single method in our test class. So if we want to make use of anything like that, if we want to run anything before and after every single method in our test class, if we want to put any logic inside there, we can create a custom listener. We can implement this interface and create these methods. We're overriding it, obviously. This part was done for us when we clicked on add unimplemented methods, and that's about it. We're done. So that's about it, guys. Please download the code files, practice, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.